Yeah, I'm Alex Frankenberg, Managing Director of the High-Tech Gründerfonds. And it's not only state-backed, it's also industry-backed. So it's a public-private partnership. A bit more than a third of the last fund, 320 million, 110 million comes from industry. So what do? We we invest in young tech startups in the seed phase, in the start phase. And we've been doing this now for almost 15 years. Our goal is to do 40 investments per year and we will approach a number 600 this year, so 15 times 40, 600. So, and the very good news is we will keep up our pace. So we will continue making new investments because everybody is healthy at the High-Tech Gründerfonds. We had one positive case, but he quickly recovered. So everybody's healthy. We're fully functional. We've moved into home office March 12, and we have great IT infrastructure. So now we can work from home really well. And we have done already 3 investment board meetings via video and have decided 8 new investments. So that's very good news. And I think the most positive news is I think we all know that the crisis will be over sometime. And after the crisis, there's going to be a huge boom, obviously. So I think 2 things are key to survive the crisis and then to position yourself to benefit from to participate in the following boom. So I think that's really important from a mindset perspective. The crisis is really bad, of course, but we all know that there's going to be something very positive after the crisis. So regarding blockchain, we have done 7 investments in that space. The first one was Bitwala in early 2016, our first investment. And then we've done a number of more investments, Iconic Labs, Coinland in Mannheim, Spherity, and what else? We've done a few more. I have strong respect for the crisis, but I'm also very positive. So the key is to survive the crisis and to position yourself, for the upcoming boom.
Okay, perfect. Thanks much. Olaf, you directly want to take the mic?
Olaf Hannemann, I'm a co-founder at CVVC. CVVC is based in Zug. We are dedicated VC investor focused exclusively on blockchain startups. And we're investing like a traditional VC would. So we seek blockchain startups that are focused on building applications based on blockchain technology. We're investing equity or convertible. We go quite early, so we go from incubation to seed to pre-A&A. And we differentiate in that we have not just that blockchain focus, but also run our own what we call ecosystem business. So we have our own incubator that we're running through CV Labs. We have co-working spaces in Zug, in Vaduz in Liechtenstein, and one opening up in Dubai. And we'll internationalize that further. Those co-working spaces then are exclusively for companies and participants that play in blockchain. And we have our own events and startup competition series focused on blockchain as well. 27 investments so far, 22 came out of 2 incubation programs. The 3rd program applications are open right now. And 5 direct investments. We go quite broad in terms of geographical focus. The 27 investments, startups from 17 countries and 4 different continents. I echo Alex's view in terms of long-term outlook as well as kind of short to medium-term struggles. We believe that some of the mega trends that a lot of the blockchain technology are addressing, which would have been strong trends in their own right, will actually be accelerated from what we're experiencing right now. And there will be very attractive opportunities for this space once you manage to ride out through the current crisis.
Okay, perfect. That was a very good overview from the, I would say, number 1 Swiss blockchain venture capital company. Okay, who's next? Maybe Kai, you would like to present yourself?
Of course. So yeah, my name is Meyer. I'm a partner at European Media Finance, which is basically a London-based family office. And picking up on Philipp's point about the name, so I always say European Media was where the money came from, because the founder had a few successful exits in the media space, and but then has been a venture investor for about 20 years, and we have started investing in blockchain and crypto companies in early 17, or actually the first investment was made already in 16, but then with a very strong focus in 17. The most well-known companies are probably Celsius Network, which is one of the biggest lending companies with Genesis and BlockFi, I would say. Then we invested in 2016 in Uphold.com, which is a wallet company / fintech platform or investment platform with around 2 million users to date. And then some other investments are Wintermute Trading and Blockchain.com Ventures, which is another venture fund we sometimes partner with and share deals with, etc. And and so our typical stage when we join is seed and Series A, and so we also, once we work with once we invested, we also have a very active approach with working with the companies and helping them with a scale up and do growth strategies with them, and we also sometimes take board seats. And and then in terms of the crisis, actually many of our companies are doing very well. They have record months, but that's probably also because they're related to trading activities. Especially Celsius had a month that makes the chart looks like this, and then it would probably go back once the volatility slows down a bit again. But because everybody wanted to lend, of course, to short sell in the downturn, and then I think the other companies, of course, have to, which we invested in and that are maybe struggling at the moment. We support them, and but they also, of course, have to look if there's government funding relevant for them. And so we just make sure to bring them through, and this is either with support from us or we reach out to other befriended or friendly VC funds to just see that we can get the companies through the crisis. And then as my fellow panelists already said, I think after the crisis there will be probably a big boom, and the trend towards digitalization is very clear.
Okay, thanks much. And then finally we have Christoph here, who also is welcome to present himself and his perspective on the looming crisis currently.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, so my name is Christoph Lymbersky. I'm working for coinIX. We are a Hamburg-based investor in blockchain companies, but not only. We invest also in coins and blockchain projects. I'm still quite new to coinIX, and before I was a managing director at T-Venture. I was one of the founding members of DTCP, Deutsche Telekom Capital Partners in Hamburg, and therefore have a really, let's say, strong venture capital background, and that is now leading a very tech-focused team at coinIX. And I think that is one of our core advantages as well, that we understand kind of both worlds. We understand the technical part very well. We can do a deep due diligence there in the projects and in the companies, and also bring the VC network and experience to the table for our investments. We, as Philipp said, we are listed at the stock exchange in Düsseldorf. which makes us a little bit different. We're not a traditional fund in that sense. We don't have such a, let's say, strong investment focus, which is an advantage for us because we are very, very flexible in what we invest in. We're not going to invest in real estate in the next couple of months, but so it's still going to stay blockchain investments. Yeah, we're not that we're not that specifically focused, let's say. So that's what makes it possible for us to, for example, buy Bitcoin or Ethereum as well if we would want to. Nevertheless, we have invested in crypto techs, which is quite well known, Tuki, Pandora, ours. So did a couple equity investments, participated in a couple STOs, convertible notes as well, of course, and invest in very early pre-seed, seed stage. Work very closely with the founders, of course, and try to help them build their company. What we have seen in the last 3 to 4 weeks is that is something that's probably also special to this early stage, is that some companies do struggle at this current time as well, and where we need to move very closely with our co-investors as well and act quickly to discuss the current situations and find ways to help these companies. In general, my opinion is that this company has a strong effect on a lot of companies, on a lot of startups that we see and that we've invested in. And that is really a challenge, especially in raising the next round. And especially those companies that plan to use a round within the next 3 months, let's say, they need to find a contingency plan and are struggling. So that's my quick intro.
Perfect. So what's happening now? Sometimes there are technical issues. So back here. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. That was very helpful. What I would like to know is basically a little experiment, basically asking you and also the audience, what are startups currently doing? Because you see all kinds of tactics now happening. Some are delaying things, some are cost cutting, some are laying off people, others are really increasing sales because now you don't need to travel around the world. You can do 10 sales calls each day in case there is a market. Therefore, let's do this for everybody. I hope everybody can see it. Go to menti.com, quickly use the code 900778 and then enter what you as a startup are doing to encounter the crisis, and let's see if this works. It's an experiment. I guess that it works, but I'm curious to see like a huge bandwidth of tactics or best practices, what can be done on a startup perspective. We'll take a couple of seconds and then we will see some results here, hopefully. Let's see if this works. Slowly some, that's interesting. Yeah. So let's wait for a couple of seconds. What happens? Yeah, go digital is interesting. Cost cutting, I think that's pretty clear. Wine, drinking wine is funny. Maybe it's not funny, but it's still a tactic. Cut headcount, Corona funding task force. That will be difficult. Work harder is can be interesting tactic, or it might even work. Stay consistent, so don't get influenced too much. Panic mode is also mentioned. Video meetings has been mentioned. That's basically can be really increasing efficiency. Change strategy, become digital, doing Zoom, looking for EU money, grants, government funding, and so on. So you see here there are many tactics what you can be done. So startups are changing their strategy, and the most often mentioned points are cutting costs and increasing sales, because as you can see here, they are bolder. Okay, that experiment worked. I'm pretty happy with the technical stuff, and therefore let's go back here. Yeah, the first question is basically, what should startups, in your opinion, do? We have now heard a couple of ideas what startups are doing, but what would you recommend, especially if funds are getting lower, the bank account is showing less and less amount of money each week, and sales can be increased but might be difficult, and especially even more so startup funding trials up. So what would your number one, number two recommendation be? Who wants to start? Maybe Alexander, yes.
Yeah, I think the most important thing really is to evaluate the situation, because you know, as you have mentioned, Philipp, it's not clear what's happening to the startup. So for every startup, they need to be clear about the situation, how the situation affects them. So it could be that they benefit, of course. If you do benefit, it could be that they are not affected at all. So if you're in the biotech sector and you have raised huge funds, then the funds last for maybe 2 years, and then you can just keep doing what you're doing. And of course, it could affect the business negatively. And it depends on how negatively. We have companies who lost all their sales, and we have companies who lost a little bit of sales. So I think to get a brutally honest and clear evaluation of the situation is a precondition to come up with you know, sensible measures. Because the worst thing would be to cut costs if there's no need to, and of course vice versa, to not cut costs, and there would be need to. So the first very most important thing is to really honestly understand the situation, and maybe the second thing is really to extend the time frame of the crisis. We don't know how long the crisis will last. So if you're very lucky, it will go over in 2 or 3 months, like it seems to be doing in China. But it also could last a year, because it will take a year until the vaccination is ready, and then during that year, everything will be slowed down more or less. So we tend to underestimate negative time frames, so extend the time frame. And then the third thing, I think what they really should do, although it might be very difficult, to plan for the boom. There will be, for sure, a huge boom coming up, very big, because it will mirror the decline. So you know, with a big decline, there will be a big boom. And at least mentally, and there should be plans how to react if the crisis is going away and then the boom is happening, because it would be a huge mistake to not being able to participate in the boom. So evaluate the situation very clearly, very honestly, extend the time frame of the crisis, might last longer, and then prepare for the boom.
Okay, perfect. Anybody wants to add something? Kai, Christoph?
Yeah. I think one very important thing, which probably a lot of startups haven't really prepared for. I mean, first, like it's not the best time to raise money, of course, because investors will probably negotiate a lot about the valuation, and they also have you know, trouble finding the valuation. I mean, most of the deals that are getting done at the moment are probably with companies investors have already looked at for 3 to 4 months. New fundings will certainly be more difficult. I mean, I'm looking at companies surely at the moment, but I mean, I want to meet the founders ideally in person, which of course is a bit more difficult at the moment. And then also there is more portfolio work at the moment, because everybody finds themselves in new situations. So new deals certainly get funded less, you know, like with a slower pace, I would say, to some extent. And then of course the companies that will stand out are the ones that really went thoughtful, like with a thoughtful approach through the crisis, and adjusted their presentation and especially their model, which I think, you know, I received models still which have forecasts in from, you know, from like, let's say 3 to 2 months ago, which is just a very different world. So if I receive such a model, I think, wow, if the founder is so thoughtless about submitting a model, like I don't even want to talk with them. So that's really important, that people adjust to the to the situation, and just reflect thoughtfully what they think their sales and their costs will look like. And cash preservation is probably key at the moment. So if you have to cut costs, I think it's a very, very important thing to do. And then I think as a founder, you have to really be honest to your team and try to get everybody on board and to go through the crisis, and maybe say, okay, we won't pay you at the moment in cash, we will give you options in the company, or do something creative to not lose your best employees, because to hire them, that will be of course difficult. To rehire them, that will be of course very difficult.
Okay. Yeah, that's also some interesting tips. Anybody wants to add something, Olaf, Christoph, or should we proceed to the next question? I have some more questions coming up actually, but as you wish.
Maybe I quickly add a little bit to this. So we speak with our startups right now along 4 categories and how they should plan and work through this. The first one is that people are aware of situations like these. You will have inertia, right? You have that inertia both on the investor side and as well as your potential customer side. Corporates, there's new budgets, contracts are being paused, reviewed. Some of the large corporates have to adjust to work at home. So how can you address that as a startup? So just be aware of that. Second is securing the existence of the company. And with that, we mean have some sort of a scenario planning what this crisis means if it is 3 months, if it's 6 months, if it's 12 months, and map out your action plan accordingly and kind of plan for the worst, but also be prepared for the best. Fundraising considerations has been mentioned before. There our clear recommendation is to one, seek to extend runway as much as possible. If you need additional runway, to focus on your existing investors and be creative there in terms of bridging. And lastly, and I think Alex pointed out as well, think in opportunities and how you can long-term benefit from this, or if your business model is long-term challenged, how to adjust your business model. So you need to think about, what impact this crisis will have on your respective business. And as I think it was mentioned before, for a lot of the blockchain technology applications, I think it's long-term positive. But then there may also be some where they say, hey, actually, we need to revise our entire business model because of this.
Okay. Sounds good. So maybe another question I would like to have now is how would you estimate the time is now proceeding in the next 6 months or 12 months? I'm pretty sure everybody of you is talking a lot to other people. So therefore, I think you have a good view of what's happening. You might even talk to governments. So what would you say is happening in the next 6 months and in the next 12 months? Who wants to start with answering you question? You, Olaf, maybe?
Yeah, sure. To be honest, I think it's impossible to say right now. I think all you can do, well, I mean, obviously we hope for a quick recovery, but then I think you just have to be diligent and plan for also longer term. I hope and I wish there's a relatively fast recovery. I think what a lot of people underestimate is what else is happening aside from COVID, i.e. when you look at what's going on the oil price, right? And also longer term financial system trends. And some of that will is not even in the news right now. So it's in the back of the mind of obviously the professional investors, but not in the broader public space. So my honest answer is I just don't know. And I think any politician who thinks they know, well, you know what? I think they're more hoping than knowing.
Okay, perfect. That's a vague answer, but I think nobody in the world can really answer this nicely. Or is anybody having a more precise answer about what's happening in the future?
I think it's very clear we are at the beginning of the COVID crisis. So we're at the beginning. So if we are very disciplined like the Chinese were, then the crisis might not be as bad as we fear. And then like the Chinese do, we can relax the restrictions more and more. So I think hopefully what we can see in the next 3-4 months that the tough restrictions will be relaxed. But then at the same time, we will see a huge crisis in Africa and in India and in many nations that don't have a health system like we have, and where the people are, I guess, much closer together. So I think the crisis will be tremendous in the world. It will be really, really big, and if we manage it really well, like the Chinese did, and like I guess Germany maybe does it, then the crisis will be less severe in the next 3 months. But at the same time, what we also see is one of the biggest financial experiments. Lots of money printing, and lots of government spending. So I think we have a huge deflationary shock right now. And as soon as that goes away, we could have a huge inflationary shock in a year or so. And that opens up a really, really big opportunity for blockchain technology, because the whole financial system will be in a mess. And it will specifically open up a huge opportunity for Bitcoin, because it's limited and there's lots of money printing going on. So I expect with the halving coming on and the money printing, the Bitcoin price to skyrocket. We will see 100,000 maybe next year, maybe 2022.
But then, Alexander, then the tactic for the founder would be to immediately stop the operations, take the money, and buy Bitcoin.
I would do. I mean, it's a little risky. High volatility. Maybe you do not stand the volatility. But I think what will happen is Bitcoin price will go up significantly, and that will inject lots of energy and motivation and money into the blockchain space. So I think there will be, as soon as Bitcoin goes up, there will be so much money and energy, positive energy in the blockchain space. And at the same time, the financial system will be under heavy stress. So I think there will be huge business opportunities from blockchain technologies replacing financial infrastructure in the next 2 years.
Okay. Anybody wants to reject this kind of opinion or would like to support it? Maybe Kai, Christoph?
No, I think it's. I totally agree with you, Alex. It's something you could also buy our stock, of course, instead of Bitcoin. But no, I would actually like to go back to the challenges a little bit, and also add to what you said, Alex, that there's going to be also probably a boom coming. I think something that the companies also, or investments or startups need to consider is, I think I totally agree there will be kind of a boom as well coming up, but we'll also face a challenge because a lot of businesses most likely will go out of business. So that's for some companies, that's customers breaking away. And we already see that in the current crisis and in the current crisis, or state of the crisis that we are right now, that a lot of customers kind of put their contracts on hold, try to renegotiate, or simply just don't buy anymore. But I think what we need to consider, because Philipp, you also asked how long is this going to take and what is the effect going to be. Even once, maybe in 2-3 months, we're allowed to go out again, and we're allowed to shop, and business can start their usual daily business again. There is still going to be some after effect for a couple months, where businesses don't really have the money yet, and need to earn money first before they can spend it again on other companies or on other products again. So that is something that is to be considered, I think, when you kind of calculate your runway that you have with your startup. It's not simply, I'm almost sure it's not going to be over in 3 months. And even though if we are allowed to go out, there is still going to be strong after effects, and possibly also the inflation that you talked about, Alex. So it's a very complex situation, and especially if companies have a limited runway, you really need to focus on extending this runway, and there might be creative approaches. So one company we talked about is that or talked with, they're thinking, for example, about crowdfunding a convertible note. That is something they would have never thought about before. I don't know if it's the ideal situation, but I'm just want to put out an, let's say, a little bit creative idea on how to extend the runway.
Yeah. I can maybe add to this just very quickly. So I was a bit optimistic, of which we are, but of course, for some companies, the best strategy might be to reduce costs to zero, to wind down, to freeze the company totally in the travel business, and reduce costs to like 10,000 euros a month. Focus on maybe tech development if you can afford it, and then stay in that survival mode for a few months until it becomes clear that the economy is waking up. So of course that might be very necessary.
Yeah, maybe I quickly also tell my opinion in a second. So I would perfectly agree with what you are saying. I took some notes. I think, and it has been mentioned earlier, either you go digital or you go bust. That's entirely working for the entire SME area in South Germany. If they are not reacting, becoming digital, then they will just be not there anymore. I think this mode of staying at home will be released after Easter, at least in Germany, at least for specific age groups, you know, like people being elderly at school, you know, around 17, 18-year-olds, they will then start going to school, and then other cohorts are coming. But I think, and that's pretty bad, you know, people 60 plus, 70 plus, they need to be isolated for the next 12 months, you know, that's really bad. I would estimate that concerning the tourism, you know, tourism is dead for the next 1.5 years. That's travel business, Mallorca, Spain, airplanes, then business travels, you know, like hotels and stuff. This should also be dead for 1.5 years. Real estate is really getting a problem, especially business real estate, because people are in the retail area, they are just moving out and never come back again. So therefore, in tourism, real estate, I think this demand, which is now breaking away, never comes back. Yeah? So these business models have a very strong problem, even though after in 2 years and afterwards. But in case you are becoming digital, I think there are really plenty chances out there. And blockchain, of course, is one mode of being. But blockchain is not ready yet. You know, I always keep on thinking, how can a startup take the chances from Corona with its blockchain profile? There is not much out there, you know. Identity is fascinating, but it's not ready yet. The digital euro is fascinating, but it's also not ready yet. So maybe let's talk also for the remaining minutes a little bit about this. And we open up again, Jan texted me a WhatsApp, we open up the questions again to the audience, and Jan asked me to show again this.
Yeah, I'm sharing it, Philipp.
Okay, do it again, please.
Yeah, can you see it? Can you see the QR code?
No, please show it again.
1 second. Share. Okay, now?
No, please do it again.
I think you are sharing, Philipp. That's why I can't.
Just maybe someone read the
No, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to do this, as Jan pointed out, because people are hijacking Zoom chats and posting crazy things there, and therefore that's the workaround here, doing this via the WhatsApp group from Jan. If you have questions, that's basically addressing the audience, then please post the questions there. As always, you can, leave such groups after using them. Therefore, it should not be a question. So one person is already writing, so therefore we will have a question. Somebody saying hello, and until the questions are coming, we will discuss further. So let's talk a little bit about the Bitcoin. So I think actually the worst case for the blockchain startups would be if the Bitcoin now drops away, decreases by another 2,000–3,000 euro, then I think blockchain startups are really getting a huge problem, and vice versa. In case the Bitcoin starts increasing, then it's like a shining sun for everybody. What's your opinion about here? How will the Bitcoin develop, or how could it develop in the next months? If you would like to say this, that's difficult to answer. And also, what would you expect about the relation between Bitcoin as a, let's call it, shining sun on all kinds of DLT and blockchain startups? Yeah, is there a relation? Who wants to take this question first?
I think there's always the risk of a short-term sell-off, like we saw on March 13th when it came down to like $3,800. But I think in the medium term, we have the halving next month in May, and we have so much money printing, so much inflationary potential being built, and then at some stage, inflationary pressure building up, and Bitcoin is limited. And I think in a way it's superior to gold because it's much easier to transport. You know, you cannot buy gold anymore, physical gold, in Germany because there's no logistics broke down, and it's hard to sell physical gold because it takes time, it has to be checked and everything. So I think Bitcoin is superior in many aspects to gold, and it's clearly limited. And with the inflationary pressure and the halving, it's very likely that Bitcoin we will see a new all-time high this year, and then it will keep increasing. The stock-to-flow model by Plan B it's still valid. Co-integration still works. So I think all the indicators are very positive for Bitcoin, and that will, as I said earlier, will generate so much money and so much energy for the blockchain ecosystem, and although the technology is not ready in many aspects, it will create a huge boost for the whole blockchain ecosystem.
Okay, any other person here wants to take an opinion on this, on Bitcoin? Otherwise, I have 2-3 interesting questions coming from the audience. For example, how have venture capitalists now changed their strategies, not in terms of, like where to invest, maybe also, but primarily about saying like an entire halt, entire stop of all investments? Is this happening already, saying we pushed the kill switch and we are not doing anything now for say 3, 4, 5 months? Is this happening with you guys, or maybe did you hear about this from other investors? Who wants to take this question? Maybe Olaf?
Well, it depends a little bit how much money you have as a VC. So I think that's the key thing. Then the second thing, obviously, that inertia topic that I spoke about before. Some people want to get to grips with the new situation first and take a bit of a pause. For us, we are clearly focusing on spending more time and reserving more capital for our existing portfolio companies, and we'll look at new investments, at least for the time being, more opportunistically, and I think that I would say is true for most. Obviously, unless you have unlimited source of funding, or you just closed a round and you see it as a unique opportunity. But I would say that for most, it's let's preserve a little more capital for existing startups to help them through this. And be a bit more careful with the new ones, and then obviously it will have an effect on valuations and also terms being less startup friendly in the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay. Any other opinion? I have 2 more fascinating questions, but if you
would like quickly, historically, the best startups, very good startups, were founded in big crises. So Microsoft 1974 oil crisis. Facebook 2004 was still in the downturn after the 2000 bubble burst, and also 2008, 2009, 2010 there were great companies founded. So I think if you understand as an investor that now you don't have so much Me Too startups, but really good startups, I think it's a huge opportunity. So if you have a long-term view, I think now is a good time to invest. Of course, you need the money and everything, but I think right now in the big crisis, there's going to be great startups being set up.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think about an investor mindset, I mean, everybody now is scared, but that's actually when you should be investing. So everybody's focusing on portfolio work, which is understandable, but actually you should go out and, there will be a lot of insider deals at the moment. And So relationships actually really matter, but you can now, you have chances to get into companies you didn't get in before, or like there will be discounts for some. I mean, probably the best or like very good startups, they will adjust and they don't have to raise, I think, but there still will be some good bargains out there. So actually, this is also from investor mindset the time you should be investing, and shouldn't be investing when there's the boom, because then everybody complains that the valuations are too high.
Actually, you know, right now I know one startup which is right now in these minutes sitting at a notary and signing their funding round. I have no clue how they did it, but they somehow managed. Okay, some smaller questions. Can anybody here elaborate on the pros and cons of crowdfunding via convertible bonds? This has been mentioned previously. Maybe a little bit more details here. Who can answer this question?
I want to do a very specific aspect of crowdfunding. We have seen very rare cases, but impressive cases of crowdfunding of employees of companies. So if you have a company and you're convinced it's a great company and everything, but it's hit by the crisis, one source of funding that's rarely used, but I think it's a very good source, is to ask your employees for funding. So if you have 30 employees, and on average you can maybe raise 20,000 per employee, some more, some less, then that's $500,000. And depending on everything, that might make sense. And I think that that's a specific form of crowdfunding, like an insider crowd, and it's totally neglected. And if the insiders are optimistic, the employees, the secretary, the salesperson, and all of the people, then I think it's a huge opportunity for fundraising.
Because these guys know how the company works, they see potentially the list of leads and so on. That's an interesting point. Okay, any other things about the specific question about convertibles, or should we move on to the next question? There I have two more. What are now, did the focus of investment or startups changed? Like maybe doing less projects with banks because they have now other problems, doing more in the area of cryptocurrencies, or doing more in the area of healthcare and blockchain, like saving patient data and all these topics. Do you think that the focus of investors are now changing here and there?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you are a company depending on industry, a startup depending on industry, on automotive industry, on logistics, and you plan for revenue in the next 12 months, then it might be difficult. So maybe these companies don't get funding, so the focus will change a little bit away from them in the short term. In the long term, we will know, I mean, there will be logistics, there will be cars and everything. So beyond the 12 months time frame, I think these companies are fundable. It becomes very clear that there's so much more potential for digital solutions, like video conferencing, everything around that, remote work, video conferencing, collaboration from remote places. I think there's much more potential. So I think these companies, they will have a good opportunity to get started and to raise.
Okay, and the last question, maybe Olaf can answer this. Let's see, but also, of course, anybody else. Where is the best location to found a company these days? Is it you can't fly to Malta and go to a notary there, but you can still from Germany drive with a car to Liechtenstein in case you can cross the border. I don't know. Switzerland, of course, can also be interesting. What's the best jurisdiction after also 2, 3, 4 years of blockchain where you would found a company in?
Well, we would still say Switzerland is a great place, but I think just in terms of understanding of the blockchain environment, the ecosystem you have, the players that are there, the networking opportunities, all in short distance, and a very sensible political framework and long-term oriented, plus great universities. So we think Switzerland is a great place. What I would say though, and I know it's a bit of a general statement, is you need to think about your target markets in terms of your end consumers. And if you're a global play, then maybe it matters less. But say, for example, we have one startup in our portfolio that is using AI and blockchain to provide better access for farmers to get microcredits, and they're based in Brazil, and that's the biggest agrochemicals agro country in the world. So obviously for them, that's a natural home, right? So I think it depends on where your natural home is, and it also depends on how much you need kind of a very blockchain specific setting. And then you base it on that, and as you rightly say, right now the limitation could also be travel, and what can you do from abroad.
Okay, any more points about the legislation, so to not have just one? Actually, concerning the ecosystem, there is no ecosystem physically these days for the next, say, 6 months. So the ecosystem suddenly becomes the world, but without any physical networking opportunities. So that's also interesting for event organizers because they don't have to spend money on catering. Any more opinions for the question about the best legislation? Otherwise, I think we have to close down the call soon because we are already a little bit over time.
Well, I think in Estonia you can found a company online. So while you can't travel, that might be an option. Yeah, I totally agree. It depends a lot on your home market. For us as a German investor, of course, we would like to have the company in Germany as well, because it's the legislation we understand. That's the market we know, that we understand, or Switzerland, of course, as well. I think in general, it's something to consider that you not only where your market is, but also where you plan to raise money, right? I mean, we've had companies that approaching us that have their corporate headquarters in the British Virgin Islands, but they are sitting in Prague and in Italy and somewhere else. In the crypto space, that's quite normal, kind of, and it's something that investors have to adapt to as well. That we have a very, very international structure. It's not the classical startup that is founded in Munich and that is serving the German market primarily. It's very, very international nowadays, so it's not an easy question, but I think one aspect to consider is also where you're planning on raising money, so yeah.